All right, good morning. Welcome to the June 11th, 2015 regular meeting of the Policy Board, of San Angelo Metropolitan Planning Association. I believe we have enough to have a quorum.
Yes, sir.
So first off, we'll start with our pledges. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Next up on the agenda is opportunity for public comment.
I do have a public comment. A gentleman called me, he couldn't be here today, but he had called me expressing some concern about the intersection of Bryant and 7th Street. He was basically saying he was almost hit by an oncoming car, and so he wanted me to just kind of share with the board and see if there was any possibility of improving that area, or just even discussing possible improvements or some options for improving that configuration. We looked at our data, and the entire intersection does have a pretty high number of collisions. So he just wanted me to pass that along for a discussion topic.
Bryant and.
That's the westbound frontage road to Houston Park.
Yes.
So right by McDonald's.
Got it.
Yeah, we got the same comments. The actual letter went to our executive director and a lot of state representatives, so he's very interested in being heard, and so we're looking at that. That intersection is actually, the signal is maintained by the city. So we passed that concern on to the city, as well as us looking at possible scenarios to change it. It's got a left turn that is protected, which means it's a solid green. And then it also has a permissive that allows, whenever the lights go green, it allows people to make that, if it's safe, they can proceed through. And so that gentleman's concern is that people don't understand that green light doesn't mean that it's not protected. So it's, there's a lot of intersections around town that are it's signed exactly like the MUTCD, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, said to design it. So there's some possibilities for some tweaks, but we'll work with the city and things like that.
Okay.
Well, I know it probably isn't the capabilities of the equipment, but when I was in the Frisco area last week, I noticed that whenever they basically don't have to protect a turn, the turn there starts flashing yellow going that way. So, of course, it might be confusing to people in this area since they're not used to that. But
I've noticed that in places too, and that's a possibility. We don't have any of those currently in San Angelo, so it would take an upgrade of equipment and maybe something that we want to consider.
with a traffic count for people turning off 87 headed, I think that's called north from 67 or east, but that is a heavy traffic count making that turn in that direction. So it is a big challenge.
And if we take away the permissive left turn, you have to steal away from the other green in that cycle, and so it backs traffic up. So we don't want to do it lightly. We don't want to make any changes lightly, but we are looking at that intersection. Okay.
All right. Any other public comment? If not, we'll move on to number 4, the approval of the May 4th Policy Board meeting minutes.
I move for approval. Second.
Okay. All right. Second by John Austin Stokes. Any questions or discussions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? carries, thank you. All right, number 5, review and approval of draft long-range transportation plan voyage 24, and take any action in connection thereto.
You may remember that we had this on the agenda for last month and then at last minute pulled it off because we immediately prior to that meeting, received some comments back from FHWA that we didn't have time to address, so it's back this month. And the changes in the proposed final wording, the core of what FHWA's comments addressed, you'll see our response to that in red, starting on page 15 of 95. It has to do with funding projections. Take everything in there with a very big grain of salt, because I'm nervous putting it in there in this format. However, that is standard across all the MPOs, and so everybody's working on the same level of uncertainty. In that sense, we're in step with all the MPOs. What it does is take our funding categories, TxDOT's funding categories, look at the average we've spent out of each one of those, even though none of them are dedicated to the MPO outside of category 2. For a time frame leading up to this year and then projected out 25 years. So there again, if your crystal ball is any better than mine, we can tweak those numbers, but that's about as good as anything. There's also elements in there for operations and maintenance, TxDOT, our maintenance funds. Local construction, performed by the city of San Angelo, which is zeroed down. And local operations and maintenance for the city, which you'll see is a pretty high, 4.2 million a year. But that I think is, I'm not sure Kristen was the one working with this, I believe that represents the entire street network maintenance budget, not just arterials, major collectors on up that would be eligible in some form and in some programs for federal funding. At any rate, that was the shortfall a month ago that we were trying to address, and so that's what's in there now. Otherwise, it didn't change the list of funded projects, nor did it change the list of unfunded project needs that y'all have already seen. So, and also I think the one other outstanding thing to be, Dora, is kind of yours to address.
Yes, sir, was the Title VI and the consultation with federal and state agencies. We just had to include some information about contacting those agencies. So starting on page 60 of 95, you'll see kind of the second paragraph. We have agency consultation. We contacted a few federal agencies like FEMA, USDA. We reached out to EPA, Historic Commission. But basically, when approving this document, you have to consult other federal and state agencies to get their feedback on the projects. And so we reached out to those agencies through email, a few phone calls, and we received no comments on those, which is kind of what we expected. But so we are compliant in that regard. And that's all for the updates to the plan.
Kind of a conundrum that they put you in and what their goal is and what they tell you as far as the financial plan portion of this. And everyone is thinking soft money subject to appropriations anyway, so it's a challenge to.
And I will say, based on what the legislature just did with highway funding and with what the voters will have a chance to decide this November, this forecast will be very dynamic, change, may go way up, which will be a nice issue to address when that does happen. We'll see. So I went wouldn't take any of this to the bank at this point, but it does give some sort of baseline. What am I looking at this document to dive into?
What's the next step on approval of this document?
Just approving it and then we'll send it.
We're approving the draft, approving it as draft today, or we're just?
We're approving it as draft today, then we'll take it out as public, take it out for public comment on our changes.
All right, any other comment, discussion? It's quite an extensive document, which will be done if we get that into a certain degree.
Yes, it does.
It's a pretty good wish list, though.
Oh, one more comment, just to remind everybody, some of the things we have coming up. The only funded projects listed in here are projects that now in 2018, in the tractor trail, William Street area on US 67, expanding that out to a freeway, to whatever extent we can with the funding identified for it. And then also, I think the next enhancement project for city, that's the only thing that's truly funded right now listed as such. There are some things in the unfunded list, most notably the improvements to Sherwood Way that we've been discussing recently, that we'll have to do an amendment, move it to the funded list so we can get it in the tips, have a two-step thing. But I was uncomfortable with listing it is funded now based on fuzzy projections, so we've kind of created a possibility for a lot of those kind of two-step actions in order to move some of these forward into the tip. But I think it's more clear to leave it that way. But if you're looking for a project like that, check the unfunded list because Sherwood Way is there. What else I'll have to find it. That's the approach we took on this.
Well, and I'm somewhat surprised that there wasn't some comments from them about the length of our unfunded project list, but this covers a pretty good period of time, so.
It does.
What
Hopefully
page is that on?
21.
It's the exercise that we talked about for the technical committee on looking at those projects and coming up with some kind of prioritization is really critical for us because at some point pretty soon, as John's alluding to, we're gonna have some money to put on something, so we need to know what.
Good, maybe this board can do some real work here instead of just paper shuffling for the last few years because there was no money. I hate to say it, but they
Fix that
get
right.
everything.
Might be interesting.
All right,
Rabbits, I'm sorry.
I was fixing to ask if anybody.
I moved to approve since I do move to approve the draft.
I will second that motion to approve the draft long-range transportation plan voyage 2040. Any other comments or questions? The floor? Well, if not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6, review and approval of the draft 2016 Unified Planning Work Program and any action in connection thereto.
In your packets, you'll see the UPWP in its draft form. UPWP is the budget for the NPO. This is for FY16. This details the planning activities for the upcoming year. I can kind of go through this. If you have any questions, please let me know. There are certain elements in here that have to, that are required, but the only items that we don't have to, that are not really required are the subtasks. We can kind of choose those as we feel, or we can suit those to address our issues. But kind of the introduction when it's talking about the purpose and the national goals, that's kind of standard language from the last document. The change that's in here that is required is starting on page 74 of 95. And this is talking about performance-based decision-making. The federal government, state governments really want NPOs to move toward a performance-based system where you're making decisions based on some kind of a system. What I'm suggesting for the NPO is we use our goals that we put in the long-range plan, which those are the balanced transportation system, safer transportation system, more public involvement, and then preserving our existing infrastructure for all modes. And so without really going through all of these, you can kind of see we had to put the goal and then develop some type of measure for these, for tracking these. These are just some suggestions. Once when we get better guidance from the state, from the Fed and then the state, we can solidify the goals. But these are just some suggestions. Common measures are usually, like if you're doing roadway improvements, maybe improving a certain amount of linear miles, you can tie it to investment dollars, you can tie it to number of projects. So really just kind of generalizing some of the measures that we have for these four goals. Further in the document, again, standard language, we had to identify the organization, so it's broken down into our components, talk about our public involvement, planning issues and emphasis. This comes from our transportation needs assessment survey, and so these are on page 78 of 95. You can see that these were really some of the most common issues that were cited in the survey, and so we've chosen these to address for FY16. So really the roadway infrastructure, lack of pedestrian infrastructure, public transportation, roadway markings, air travel options, and then education for the motorists and the cyclists. So these issues and emphasis are included with the four tasks that we have in the planning document. So if there aren't any questions on that, I can go through the tasks. Questions? Okay.
That's good. It did not print off all.
Oh, there's,
Thank you for spending y'all's printing that.
oh, okay. So on 79 of page 95. Starting out with the task, task one is the first one, and that is administration and management. So this one is really all of the administrative and operational functions of the organization, and I can run through the subtasks for this one. So subtask 1.1 is administration, basically talking about complying with the different regulations that we have. This one also includes any purchase of office supplies, any equipment, communication, and then this our rent and our utilities. 1.2, development and education. This is for the board, the technical committee, as well as the advisory committee. So this is participating in any type of educational trainings, workshops, any meetings, conferences, any cost associated with those will be charged to this subtask. 1.3, collaborative planning. So really the organization, again, policy board, staff, advisory committee, any costs associated with collaborative planning with various stakeholder organizations will be included in this subtask. And then 1.4 is public involvement. So any outreach, social media, any of our information that we put out to the public, any type of Title VI or environmental justice activities that we do are charged in this subtask. And so you can see on the chart that these have been broken down. Task 1.1 totaling 110,000, 1.2, 12,800, 1.3, 14,000, and 1.4, 12,900 for a total of 149,700. Any questions on task one? Task 2 is data development and maintenance. So in this task, this has to do basically with all of our, any types of data that we use or collect. Task 2.1, data collection and analysis, any types of survey data that we collect, American Community Survey statistics, census information, just general demographics. All of that will be included in this subtask. 2.2, our database development, just maintaining these different databases that we have. We do keep several, we look at different elements, and so all of that will be charged to 2.2. And 2.3, website maintenance, anything that we have to do for the website. So that could be many types of projects, any types of documents that we upload, any outreach that's under here. So 2.1, total 16,800, 2.2, 3,500, and 2.3, 4,000. So the total for task 2, 24,300. Any questions on task 2?
There's 4,000 for website payments, outside of, does staff maintain that, or we pay?
Staff maintains that, but we also have a company that hosts that for us. And so this
That's
is,
for the web hosting,
well, it's not all, I mean, anytime staff works on the website, it'll be charged to that subtask, so that's staff time.
that's not, okay, so that's not contracted service.
That's just staff time. If we did have to pay them to do something to the website, that would be charged under task 1. Task 3, short-range planning. Subtask for this one, transportation improvement program, so that's our TIP, any changes that we make to the TIP, any modifications, projects, amounts, we will charge time to this one. 3.2, Unified Planning Work Program. So the document that we're looking at right now, any changes that we make to this document, any activities that involve this document are included in this subtask. And then 3.3, Transportation System Analysis. So this is really our research, any types of technology improvements, any modeling concepts or any other improvement concepts are all charged to this one. 3.1, total of 7,900. 3.2, 4,950. And then 3.3, 12,500 for a total of 25,350. Questions? And task 4 is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So that is our long-range transportation planning document. Subtask 4.1, roadway planning. These are pretty explanatory. 4.2 would be public transportation planning, and then finally 4.3, non-motorized planning, so bike and pedestrian type planning activities. So 4.1, a total of 11,500, 4.2, 6,000, 4.3, 8,150, for a total of 25,650. Any questions on task 4? And then the final task, task 5 is really reserved for any types of consultant studies, any kind of contracted services that you have. For FY 15, we did not put any money in this task. For 16, I would like to recommend adding a transportation system assessment survey. And while all the details aren't finalized, we will need to talk to some partners and stakeholders about this. But I think it would be a really good idea for the NPO to put out some type of survey that has a measure. And we basically conduct this survey every 2 years, and this will kind of tell us how the organization is going. And it's not necessarily evaluating the NPO, it's really evaluating the transportation system. We did the transportation needs assessment survey, which kind of gave us a really good idea about the problems, the issues, the projects, and things like that. The only problem with that survey is it did not have a scale or a system to measure. And so we took those results, we incorporated into our different documents, but as we're making these improvements, as we're making changes, adopting policies, I think it would be a really good idea for us to know if any of these are improving the transportation system in general. And so really having just some type of a survey and maybe something different, but having something in there where we can look back every couple of years and say, you know, this worked, this did not work. But again, this is from the viewpoint of the citizens. And so as we do it, we, of course, will bring it back to the board because we would need the approval, but putting it into the document right now for a total cost of $5,000.
Would that be like for the services of Ken Stewart's group, or would you have to put it out for bid?
With this amount, we may be able to just use them. I haven't talked to them yet, but since they did such a great job on the last two surveys, if we could use them for this, that would be very helpful. And it would be something similar in both of those surveys. Again, we would just have a measurement element with it this time.
If we do that, one thing that was missing in the last one that would be nice to incorporate is some kind of financial constraint in when people are determining what they would like us to be focusing on. The last one, that was real easy just to pick stuff without assigning priorities to it, but if we know we've got a financially constrained budget, what would people choose to do if they could only do a certain percentage of stuff? I don't know how you'd incorporate that, but I think that would help me to know what their highest priority is.
I think that would speak well to try to provide some continuity over subsequent analysis is that, yes, I was thinking the same thing. It's easy to take a survey if you're going to start all over with an unlimited budget, what you think, but realistically, we have to have information that we can apply functionally to what we're doing, so. Okay.
Okay. The final page for this one is the budget summary. Again, it lists all the tasks. So the proposed budget for FY16 is $230,000, $5,000 increase from the FY15 budget. And you can see right now we don't know how much money we will be receiving from Federal Highways and Federal Transit District for FY16, and so we've used the estimates that we got last year. So 136 from Federal Highways, 44 from Federal Transit District, and then our current carryover balance right now is 243,700. So really, this is giving the total transportation planning budget of 423,700.
So again, we just need to understand that we're spending more money than is coming in, which is reducing the balance, which is probably a good thing. There's no value in holding that as an unexpended balance.
Yes, sir.
But at some point, we can't continue. At some point, the unexpended balance would go down to zero, and we would have to go back to a lower budget.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And is it an assumption as construction funding comes available, this planning budget is gonna have more pressure on it because the activity as construction, there would be more need for these services and these activities to guide us? I don't.
Right, and I don't think there's any expectation of the planning funds expanding proportionately to the potential construction budget, so yeah.
But the activities could change, like you're saying, if there's a certain project or something that we're looking for, then yeah, we may need to modify this budget so that we can focus on that. So the activities in the document could change depending on what the project funds.
I guess my point is it's predictable somehow how that balance is going down based on operations, but if there's more pressure, that balance, ending balance is gonna evaporate quicker if, if there's more planning needs based on, I guess, which would be a good problem if we had more construction money than we had planning money. So I don't see we're probably gonna get there, but.
questions. Okay, so just a motion on this one, and we will bring back the entire document at the July meeting for final approval. July, Joe, when is this due to the,
First part of August.
so we'll take this to the TAC also and see if they have any recommendations or suggestions for planning activities. So either July or bring it back in August for final approval.
I guess I do have a question for Joe, and Joe's our coordinator for TxDOT over several of our MPOs. He helps us make sure that we're all consistent. As far as that unexpended carryover, other MPOs, how are they handling that? Are they carrying a big carryover? Are they
It
trying to budget on
varies
what's coming?
across the state. Some have zeroed out their carryover where they're relying strictly on the annual allocation. Others have a enormous balance. So it varies kind of. I've heard people say a good rule of thumb is to at least have about a 6-month operating budget in your carryover to maintain that. Cause you never know, like FY15, MAP 21 only funded it until the end of May. And we got a continuing resolution for 2 months. So these if you're relying on your annual allocation, you never know what Congress is gonna fund or not fund. So if you don't have the carryover or the reserve, you could, face potential shutdowns until additional funding is
Yeah, so we're nowhere close to being in danger of that. We've got plenty of an emergency fund, but at some point, we're gonna have to make sure that we pull back on the reins, and it's a few years away before that becomes an act. That was my only thought.
Well, I'll move for approval of the draft of the UPWP.
I'll second. We do that in a second. Any other questions or comments? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Submitted. Number 7, representative reports.
This item was included, this will be a regular agenda item like I told you all. This gives each organization an opportunity to discuss any projects, happenings, anything of concern to the MPO. If there is a particular item that you do want to have board approval on, just let me know and we can certainly list that as a separate item. But putting it like this allows each organization to discuss whatever they feel is important for the board. And so, did not know the mayor was not gonna be here today. I believe the city manager had mentioned that he would be out, so we can skip the city of San Angelo.
Looking for any city
Shall we
lawyer or
speak for
anything. That just allows TxDOT more time.
Just real
We'll defer our time to,
So I think the mayor in particular requested an update on our upcoming project on Houston Park from Chadburger Street to Smith Boulevard, and that's what Gary's gonna speak about this morning.
Okay, I'm Gary Enos with TxDOT here in San Angelo, and I do design work for TxDOT San Angelo District. And the particular project that y'all had asked about, project number 67 to repave portions of 67. So I'm just going to cover today our plan for Loop 306 and 67 within San Angelo. Yeah. This map shows the major paving projects that we've done since 2008, and you can see we've made good progress. Other than nothing on the Houston Park Freeway except at the very ends. We've done some seal coats and microsurfacing and preventive maintenance type work, but nothing like a major paving project. So that's the area of concern right now, is basically from Smith Boulevard on back to Sherwood Way. And I'm sure you're all familiar with how distressed the pavement is and how rough the ride is right now. These are just some photos, close up showing the cracking. There's 4 photos show those. These are out towards the east end of the project. And so the portions of the roadway on 67 that we haven't paved in recent years, we do have a plan to break that up into 3 sections. The red project at the east end is one that the MPO has already approved, and we're going to put that up for bids in July and open bids in August. It's about a $5.5 million project, and it's funded by Proposition 1. Then we have a couple of planned projects to complete this section, both of which are unfunded, and we got some tentative cost estimates for those and timeframes that we're looking at. For the project that's coming up late summer, this is going to be an asphalt concrete overlay from US 87 Bryant Boulevard out to Smith Boulevard. The way it's funded is that we allocated all of the MPO's Prop 1 funds for 2015, which was approved by the MPO, about $2.5 million. And then the district has also kicked in about $3 million of our Prop 1 funds for 2015 to make the project whole. What you're going to see as the end product is 3.5 inches of new asphalt concrete pavement in the travel lanes, which would be the right lanes, because those are more highly distressed. And then 1.5 inches of new asphalt concrete pavement in the passing lanes. And there's not going to be work on the frontage roads in this project, but we are going to work on the entrance and exit ramps. The ones that are more heavily traveled and more distressed, we're going to put Portland cement concrete pavement, and the rest will get new asphalt concrete pavement. I have probably way more detail than you want to see, but these are just drafts of our plan sheet showing typical sections and kind of the project limits. This is where the project starts, there at Bryant Boulevard, near the McDonald's that we're talking about. And there's a lot going on here, but this is just the shaded areas are going to show you the areas that we're going to pave in this project. Going east, it just shows what we're going to do in this project. So I guess if you don't have any specific questions, I can try to answer those.
About 3.5 and 1.5 will translate into very smooth, right?
Yes.
As opposed to kind of a grainy.
It will not be a seal coat.
Right.
It's ACD with,
Yeah, it'll be a nice surface. We'll all be proud of people coming into San Angelo on this path once it's done.
With the 3.5, it's actually 2 different passes of paving, so we get 2 chances to make it smooth. So that should help a lot.
Great.
Well, in the county, we use a rough road surface to control traffic speeds. So if y'all make it real smooth.
We can say that's the reason we let this get so bad, but it hasn't seemed to work, so we're going to go ahead and smooth it back up.
I tell you what that does illustrate, but it'll take 4 minutes, 5 minutes most to make that run from Smith Boulevard to the exchange out on the west end. And $15 million to repave that section that you, it just
Welcome to our world.
challenges.
Welcome to our world. We have 7,300 lane miles of road, and so we get what seems like a pretty good chunk of money every year, but it's just a drop in the bucket compared to what we need to be doing. This is good, and this was a project that the board voted to put at least that initial allocation of Proposition 1 money on, if you guys remember, and it's gonna be well spent, and then we, the district, put other money on it to make sure that it was fully funded. So I think we'll be pleased with this as a project.
Well, I'm encouraged to hear that it is a serious repaving project. It's not just trying to get through the day, I guess.
So this is better than a Band-Aid. This is
Yes.
gonna be a good long-term solution out there.
Okay, thank you.
Good job.
All right, appreciate it, yes, thanks.
So in our future allocations, we'll be looking at Bryant going west and where that can be.
Probably so. We'll, once we get the prioritized list of projects that we talked about, then we as a board will decide what to do with the portion of the Prop 1 that's assigned to the MPO. And then we as TxDOT also have additional funds that will help fund some of the needs inside the MPO boundary.
Anything else? TxDOT, any questions, other questions? All right, Major, what have you got for the transit district?
Well,
Anything?
we've got a lot going on right now. We've been working with Mr. Hill and John Austin and everybody on a project that has become real popular, and all of you will remember all the conversation about bus stops. And I put a map over on the wall that Doré found in the city's map archive of what was originally planned and part of it done as far as bus stops, bus shelters, and those signs in a bucket. So we found this map, and we had a meeting with the city, and we agreed to, by the end of this month, we'll have a complete inventory of what actually is out there. We'll be using this map to go out and see what is really there and what's really not there. Come up with a inventory by location by the end of the month. We will then go back to the city with a plan. If you all will remember, right, all these bus stops are kind of sitting in limbo. Nobody owns them anymore. Because the city thought they transferred them, but nothing was ever transferred. Only the vehicles were transferred. So we want to get an agreement going. John Austin's going to task Jude and Tracy to come up with some sort of agreement that we can present to the city to actually take ownership of these with some cooperation from the city as far as easement goes. So if we end up with a little bitty bench somewhere on a little bitty sidewalk and we want to go put a shelter, we're gonna have a cooperation of the city to go and tear that up and put in a pad. We're also gonna have cooperation from the city to go in and put permanent poles with large signs that say, this is a bus stop, you're on this route, here's the map, here's what time it comes by, and here's where you are. So that people will actually be able to go find a bus stop. We'll actually assign some permanent bus stops. And people will actually be able to go find them. They'll have a place to sit, or hopefully a place to get out of the sun or the rain if we get any rain again. So it's gonna be a big long-term project. Once we get all of this ownership taken care of, then we wanna go out for a capital improvement grant to buy more shelters so that we can start putting them up around the city. We're looking at possibly every 3 blocks, depending on the area that we're in, so that we don't have the vehicles stopping at every block, because we're a flag down system, which just slows down the headway for the buses drastically. So it's a big project. It's well underway finally. I think it's gonna go smoothly, and I'm hoping that by September we can have at least that ownership taken care of, to where then we can get on with bigger and better things. Our regional coordination and planning committee is gonna reevaluate our bus routes this year. We are getting a lot of demand from the south side out by the lake, where the population wasn't expected to really grow very much, but it has with the oil business coming in. So we're starting to get a lot of questions about, why don't you have bus service out towards the lake? So we're gonna be, the regional coordination planning committee is gonna be looking at all of these bus routes to say, okay, what's the demographics? Where are we really needed? Where is the demand? maybe we'll change some bus routes, maybe we'll come up and say, actually, we need another bus route. So we'll be putting that together. Most of you know we started the ASU route. It's still in a test pattern at the time, but it's been tremendously successful. When the last semester was in, we were averaging over 200 riders in basically a day and a half weekend.
How's that, I'm sorry, how's that compared to some of your other routes?
That's pretty tremendous.
It's pretty high, right?
Yeah, it's
Is it
really
the
high.
top 2 or 3?
Probably, yeah. Probably the only two that might beat it would be maybe Route 5 and Route 1. But all the rest of them, it's ahead of them if you figure per hour ridership. Yeah, it's probably ahead of them.
That's a fantastic deal. I know the chamber was interested.
Yeah, we figure that it's probably going to increase ridership for the transit district by anywhere from 5 to 9,000 riders per year. And for a small urban transit district like us, that's a huge increase, which will relate to more funding from the federal government. So we're really happy about it. We met here not too long ago, went over the results of what we've got so far. Now that summer session is in, our ridership has decreased a little bit, but we're still pushing over 100 a weekend. So as we get into the fall session, I'm sure it's going to jump right back up again because that's when the majority of the foreign students come in. They're also projecting, I think, they said between 400 and 600 new freshmen every year in the future. So these will be kids, most of them without transportation. So I think this is going to be a hugely successful project. I think it's going to expand as the years go by. So that's been a good thing, and we're real happy with that. We're real proud to be a part of it. The other things we've got going are all things that we've had in the past, projects with the base, projects with the chamber, and it all is going well. That just never ceases to amaze me that all this just keeps going on, and now other chambers, Susan Phil has been meeting with them as well. We're starting to get other chambers in the Concho Valley that are calling us saying, hey, we were told that you guys might be able to help us. So that'll be reaching out to the other counties, and that's always a good thing. So veterans transportation, there's a huge initiative on that right now, as most of you know. We're one of the fortunate transit districts in that we already have infrastructure out there in the rural communities. We already have vehicles, we already have drivers. We already have parking spaces and office space for our drivers to do paperwork and that kind of thing. We have the cooperation of the counties. So we're very fortunate in that respect. We've been in conversation with TxDOT and with the Central Texas Veterans Commission. They're very pleased with what is happening because originally the project was set up to basically buy a bus for a county, and then it was on the county's back to fund a sustainable project to transport these veterans. Well, most of the very rural counties that couldn't afford to buy the bus in the first place on their own certainly can't afford to go out and hire drivers and admin staff and pay for gas and pay for upkeep on a vehicle. So the program was pretty unsuccessful, especially out here in this area. So through TxDOT and through several conference calls with transit districts like us, we've actually been able to get them to alter the grant to where the county doesn't have to buy the vehicle. They want the transit agencies to buy the vehicle because they already have the wherewithal to set up a program and probably maintain it. So our particular region qualifies for their 3 vehicles. We've got 7 counties that actually qualify, but only 3 of them qualify for a vehicle. So we can go out and purchase those vehicles and we can get these programs started. The question has always been, okay, how are we going to fund a sustainable program to transport these veterans to the veterans hospitals? So the Central Texas Veterans Commission and the Veterans Administration have actually come up with a renewable grant for this, to where every year you're going to be able to go in and apply for operational funds up to the $50,000 that the original grant was. So we'll be able to go out to those, for those 3 vehicles, we'll actually be able to go out and apply for money each year for another $150,000, $50,000 for each vehicle to maintain a program, to keep a driver in place. We've asked them point blank, okay, these vehicles, what kind of restrictions are we gonna be under for these vehicles? And they're saying, frankly, we don't care what you use them for, as long as those veterans get transported, as long as you maintain the vehicles, as long as you do what you say you're gonna do. The accounting process and reporting process, they've made it as simple as it can possibly be. It's basically just a driver's log that says, here's proof we're transporting your veterans. There was a lot of question about it, because if we end up bringing people in from, say, Junction and Sonora and some of the outlying areas, and we're taking them all the way to Big Lake because they didn't have an appointment at, say, Kerrville, or we're taking them all the way to San Antonio, you're gonna have a vehicle and a driver tied up, and you're gonna have these poor people on this bus for 14, 16 hours. So they got the veterans hospitals to come to an agreement that for this project, they would issue these veterans a special ID badge, that they would then put them in a database to where all their appointments were scheduled at the same time on the same day, so that they would all get out about the same time and the same day, instead of having to sit there and wait for each other. And also that once these veterans, once we drop them off at the door and they have this ID with them, they get priority attention so that we can get them back out, because they've had to travel such great distance. So the veterans hospitals are already working on this. They're already coming up with the IDs. So it's gonna be a real cooperative effort. There was also a lot of talk about, for instance, if we've got somebody in Edwards County that has to go to Big Lake, if they have to transport that person, that means that their vehicle and their driver is gonna be completely out of pocket for probably a 16 or 18-hour day by the time that that person gets to the vehicle, gets it ready, and gets everybody back home, and then finally they get home. So we got them to agree on the accounting process to where, for instance, SWART, which is south of us, and CVTD could partner on these programs, and both of them could account for the transportation of that veteran. So in other words, they could bring that person up as far as, say, Sonora or El Dorado even, and pass them off to a vehicle that we've got, and then we would take them the rest of the way, and then when we're on our way back, we can get a hold of them and say, okay, we're on our way back, meet us at this time, and then they would come up to that meeting point and take them on home. Because otherwise, either we're going all the way down there and coming back, or they're going all the way up and going back. So that's gonna create a lot of opportunity for the program, especially when you start thinking about San Antonio or El Paso. Those are gonna be really long distance situations. We've already sent them a spreadsheet of everyone, every vehicle and driver that we've got out in our counties, where they're based and how far it is to Kerrville and Big Spring Hospital, so that they know what kind of distances we're gonna be traveling. We've also got them to agree that we don't have to limit it to those counties that qualify, that we can on the way pick up veterans from other counties if the vehicle's not full. So we'll be able to serve even more than just the very rural counties that qualify. So we're hoping to come up with some sort of little mini bus terminal idea where each county can get to another county temporarily and then back to their own county to do their business, but they can exchange people in the process at a midpoint right close to the county lines. So then they can get back to the counties to do their local service, but in the process, they can pass people like these veterans off and get them to where they get them to that vehicle that's actually gonna get them to the hospital. So it's a big project, but it sounds like it's gonna be a lot of fun. They're trying to get everybody in and get a contract signed with the Veterans Commission. There's still some questions left. We have another conference call this next week. We'll see what answers they come back with from there. And I would imagine that probably CVTD and SWART, since we're the two that are most likely to get started sooner than the others, we're probably gonna be looking at a conversation with our executive directors and the Central Texas Veterans Commission. I would say probably by the end of September, to possibly look at getting a contract signed and starting to get these vehicles purchased. Other than that, we're just, we're still trying to improve daily, just like we always are. Our ridership is up a little bit in places, down a little bit in places, but generally it's up, so we're happy with it.
I do need to mention that, the transit district intends on hiring a general manager. The way we're structured now is Major's the operations manager, and then I'm the executive director. I think everybody knows that the COG is the parent agency of Concho Valley Transit District, and this is Major and I's basically throwing our hands up saying, someone come help us, please. You know, we've got the service part and the responsiveness part down. We need help with compliance, and we get there through experience, I think. And so we did a lot of research. We're kind of a jackalope of transit agencies in that we run small, urban, and rural. I think there maybe is only one other place in the state where they do that they were crazy enough to do it. And then there aren't any that are designed that way that don't contract out at least part of it. Well, we had some autonomy concerns, and I know the board did, about contracting out whole parts of our service. But to bring in a general manager, there was some federal incentives, and we could make it work financially. And so we put out an RFP at the beginning of May. We've got 2 bids back, and we'll have a team sit down in the next couple of weeks and evaluate those bids, and hopefully have someone in here by September and provide some relief. And I think that it's going to take things to a level of professionalism that this community really deserves.
Right. Well, since we're a unique jackalope district, I guess the general manager is, since there's only other one, you may need to apply the Baptist philosophy to it. You go steal somebody else's passion when you need one, so you may go whoever their general manager is, has a specific experience. All right, Phil, has the chamber got anything?
Just a few. Again, thanks to COG and the Transit District for the great work on the Ram Tram. We're also trying to get ridership up again on the Goodfellow route. Policy-wise, I guess everybody knows that the Congress postponed the Surface Transportation Act. I guess it was reauthorized till the end of July. So organizations like ours and others that have supported a 6-year reauthorization just need to be in touch with our federal representatives and remind them that we want them to come to consensus, and we need a good future funding mechanism that will supply the states and our local areas with, with what we need, right? And we can thank, I guess, our state legislature for giving us the opportunity now in November to complete the state funding that we've been working toward. And so our board hopefully will consider that in our next meeting, late July, to support that and then get others to do that so that we don't just assume that it'll pass again, because it's transportation, but really get behind it in a big way. So other comments on that? Okay. Other than that,
Just one comment is that from our trip, and this is about the 3rd trip I've made up there, and it's the same thing. Everyone up there is Captain Obvious. It's broken, but they still can't get on the same page.
Exactly.
How they're going to take care of it.
exactly.
Just
To
frustrating.
Washington, you mean? Or Austin?
Yes.
Yes. And that's why I think we should remind ourselves to when we see our elected representatives and others with whom we can correspond or have influence. We just need to remind them that it's important to us because it comes all the way down. Okay, and then just a reminder, June 26th through 28th is our annual drag boat races. So there will be a lot of traffic on the Lake Nasworthy Bridge and all those roads leading to both sides of the race, Red Bluff and Knickerbocker all the way through. So hopefully no major projects considered during that 1 3-day weekend and probably a few days before. And then I noticed there was another accident on Old Cristobal Road, a serious one recently, so I'll just point that out. Talk about Captain Obvious, you know, it continues to be the traffic a concern. So, you know, we'll continue to keep that in front of everybody as we look at possible options.
Got to factor into our priority list. So.
It does. So we'll continue to mention that. And then finally, our West Texas Legislative Summit, which is the first week of August, 4th and 5th, will have transportation as one of its major topics. So we're really starting our major publicity on that next week. Would love to have participation from any of your entities, NPO, but we will have, we already have confirmation on Senator Nichols to be here. We're working on other state and federal folks. If you have ideas, our committee's meeting tomorrow to finalize. We've made a lot of invitations, not everybody's accepted them. If you have suggestions for topics, for speakers, we'd love to have those. That's my report.
So the chairman of the Transportation Commission is in the Midland Odessa area.
Yes.
It would be great to have him.
We have invited him.
Chairman Lewis.
Tryon
Lewis.
Tryon Lewis, yes. Haven't heard yet, but he has been a participant in the summit in the past as a legislator, so he knows what this is about. It's getting West Texans together to talk about issues. So hopefully he'll work it out in his schedule.
Hope so.
Yes.
Is registration open for that?
It is online.
Thank you, Phil.
Voting issues. I've got to get up to get the local.
There's nothing else in terms of that.
So I won't mess it up. I'll screw up the core. Okay.
Before you leave, let Wendy talk about the drink and drive campaign real quick, and then we'll let you guys go.
Okay, so we were thinking about how we can get the community more involved and accountable for the DWIs. There's been a lot of incidents. We all hear it on the news. We see it on all the different social medias out there. So during Memorial Day weekend, it was just one of those things, let's try to see what happens. And so we came up with the Don't Drink and Drive Challenge. The mayor has done a video for the campaign talking about his son, how he was affected by an incident and he was injured, and he completely supports the program. In May, we also did a proclamation, and that was when the mayor challenged the community to take part of doing this pledge. It didn't go over as well as we wanted it to, because we realized that San Angelonians want something back. So we came up with this idea of doing a summer fun pail, and it's going to be gift cards and gift certificates to area businesses. And right now we're sitting at about $50 in hand that I have on this gift pail, but I have about $75 I need to go collect today. I've also contacted SeaWorld and Six Flags and Schlitterbahn, trying to get them to give us some freebies. If the community can get behind this, which in one day we have 22 pledges already filled out, this could be huge. The MPO, I think, is good publicity for us. We need to get out there and let people know that we're not just the folks that you can come talk to about the roads, but we also want to do different types of safety lectures, and that's kind of my part of the MPO. Mine's the community outreach. So I think this is going to be really good. I gave you all a flyer. If you want posters for your facilities or anybody that you know or businesses that I should solicit, let me know about it. You can go online and take the pledge on Facebook. If you don't have access to Facebook, I can send you an actual pledge form to do. But so far, I mean, in one day, we had 22 people sign up, and for the Memorial Day campaign, we only had 30 complete. So I think this is gonna be really good, and I think if the community realizes that it's an issue, maybe then before they go out and have a drink, they'll think about having a designated driver, having that taxi cab, you know, ready on standby, but just to be more accountable, because it's crazy that people put themselves out there, and I don't know if it's because we're in West Texas and I didn't grow up here, so it's a little bit different, because I don't know what it was like, you know, as a teenager or as a young 21-year-old. The contest, or I should say the pledges are open to anyone over 21, because that's the legal drinking age. So if there's anyone that you all know I should contact, or you want me to speak somewhere at one of your meetings, let me know, and I would love to do it.
You already have the posters made up? And they're
I
available?
do, I have some in my office.
John, can you grab one before you leave? We'll put it
If I
on
can
our
grab it
list.
real quick, as I have.
Okay.
Oh, I can run and get it right now.
Ready if you want.
Y'all have any questions or anything about it?
Or Gary should pick it up on the way out too, so.
You gotta real quick, gotta tell us what you've been doing, what you've been spending.
Oh, I was just gonna
Since
put
we
it,
saw
I
you
was
last time.
gonna, we broke it down into tasks to make it a little more, clear on what we've been working on, so we broke it down into tasks. Really, all of these are important, I won't go through them all, but if you have any questions on any of those, please let me know. We're doing a lot of, going to meetings and a lot more contacting individuals to build a better collaboration. For the month of March, we spent $21,008.20.
Any questions?
And that is all I've got.
All right,
It is.
no attendance report, next meeting, July 9th. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
solid?
That is solid.
Okay. Any other comments, any other business before this body? If not, I will say we are adjourned at 9:43.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.